Look, I'll admit it. I've been pretty hard on certain supercars lately. The Lycan Hypersport, the Devil 16, and the SSC Tuatara. But today, my sights are set on a carbon fiber, funky-doored, all-electric contender in Donut's own backyard. It's called the Raesr Tachyon Speed. This full-size Hot Wheel, built in an industrial park in California, claims to have more horsepower than a Bugatti Veyron, a top speed of over 240 miles per hour, and the craziest number of them all, almost 4,000 foot-pounds of torque.
4,000 foot-pounds of torque.
Is Raesr making promises it can't follow through on? Or is this thing actually legit? The answer is more complicated than you might think. We're going to take a look at just how feasible these claims are and what this car will be up against when it actually gets released. I apologize for my voice being a little weird. Last night I went to a Mastodon show and it was awesome. You might have heard of the Raesr Tachyon Speed because it was added to Forza Horizon 4 sometime last year. Gaming has always been a great way for people to find out about rare or unique cars, especially when that car is really, really fast. And so when people got to drive the digitized Tachyon Speed that they had never seen before, Google searches spiked and forums lit up with people trying to figure out how the heck to say Raesr. I'm still not sure that I'm saying it correctly myself. No matter how you say it, this thing looks right at home in a video game. From the way the front and back are spiked, to the crazy way the doors open, to the fact that this is a tandem two-seater. YouTubers and car vloggers such as Supercar Blondie have been given the grand tour of this car. A few of them have even gotten to sit in the centralized driver's seat and putt it around a parking lot. And to do that, you have to first use a key, except that this car doesn't have a key. It has the whole steering wheel, with built-in controls for the actuated doors, ride height adjustability, and active aero. This car feels like it's got a few gimmicks to make it feel like a race car. But this is where we start to see some very familiar telltale signs that something might be up. For one, there's very little footage of this thing. Raesr had a couple media visits to their headquarters, shot an EV commercial in the desert, and they have taken a few GoPros with them up a canyon. Cool. But besides that, we haven't seen much other than concourse events, and we haven't seen anything that proves the Tachyon Speed's speed. It's nice to see this thing parked on Rodeo Drive, but what we really want to see is on the track, right? And then there's the numbers claims. Half the media coverage of this car says 1,600 horsepower, but anything more official says anything from 1,200 and 1,250. That's a big difference. There's a whole EcoBoost Mustang's worth of discrepancy in there. And then finally, there's the outlandish claim of nearly 4,000 foot-pounds of torque. That's more torque than a 2020 Ford F-350 Power Stroke, a Ram 3500 with a Cummins turbo diesel, and a Duramax Silverado combined. That would be a real achievement for the team at Raesr, if it's true. But despite the limited real-world footage, despite the crazy number claims, and despite the ludicrous styling that makes it look like the initial design must have been done with a crayon, I believe Raesr, and here's why. Raesr has a few things going for them that cars like the Lycan and Devil did not. One of the most important differences is that the Tachyon is electric. Electric power is the absolute Wild West right now.
60. 130. Quarter mile.
Power delivery is growing more and more each year, and when the idea for the Tachyon Speed was conceived in 2014, a target of 1,200 horsepower actually seemed attainable for an all-electric car. Heck, Rimac had already done it with the Concept 1, and since then, electric power has gotten even crazier. James did a D-list on this a while ago, and there's a handful of electric cars coming soon that are chucking out over 1,700 horsepower. Horsepower hasn't really been a limiting factor for electric cars since the days of the G-Wiz and the Nissan Leaf. The limiting factor has always been range. On their own website, Raesr admits that the Tachyon prototype has a limited range of about 150 miles, but that the final car will have options with over 300 miles of range. But as far as the horsepower claims go, the math works out. The Tachyon uses 6 electric motors, 2 in the front and 4 in the rear. Each, they claim, are capable of 300 horsepower. We add all that up and subtract your parasitic losses, your voltage sag, and your inverter efficiency, then 1,250 is still a conservative estimate. And 300 horsepower per motor isn't a crazy claim. Standalone Tesla drive units are available for $10,000 each and make about 300 horsepower. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the team at Raesr is using, but I'm sure it's capable to what I could find within 5 minutes of Googling. So at least the claim of 1,250 is within the realm of possibility. But making cars is a lot harder than just sticking a motor in a chassis, right? Well, Raesr actually has a lot less to do than you might think. One thing that really makes the Tachyon more of a possibility than a pipe dream is that it is a street-legal car that is not designed for luxury. It's designed for the track. When a small team is designing a car like the Tachyon, it helps that they don't have to think about infotainment or noise, vibration, and harshness, or that pesky little thing called cargo space. The Tachyon is built on a chromoly tube frame chassis covered in carbon fiber, not unlike the Altamaniac that we covered on B2B a few months ago. When you look at what some of the custom shops can do for drift, time attack, and drag racing, building a track car from the ground up doesn't actually seem that far off. Remember the steering wheel key thing that they had? Well, from what I can tell, they're using a Momo steering wheel with something like a Haltech digital dash mounted in the center. That's honestly not too unheard of and is pretty standard fare for, say, a GT3 car. This is basically an off-the-shelf quick release with some custom fab work and programming, and at this point, they sound more like a race shop than a manufacturer, and that is one of the things that I think makes this car feasible. If they're selling this as a track-only, non-road legal toy, I would have even less doubts about them delivering a finished product. And honestly, I bet the red tape of making this thing road legal is a big part of why we haven't seen much progress on it in 5 years. But what about their most outlandish claim, the 4,000 foot-pounds of torque? Well, it turns out it wouldn't be hard for them to be right.
Zero emission.
During the 2020 Super Bowl, GMC revealed a brand new Hummer EV, and also some people played football. The all-new electric off-roader tore through the desert while big numbers filled the screen. 11,500 foot-pounds of torque. That's more than a Top Fuel dragster makes. And GMC is gonna sell that to the public? It sounded too good to be true. And in the following few weeks, many people who are better at math than me explained that it was too good to be true. But it boils down to this. When manufacturers list horsepower and torque of a car, they list the power at the crankshaft of the engine. For horsepower, it's a higher number than what is read at the wheels because of the parasitic losses of the powertrain. For torque, those losses apply too, but since torque is all about turning force, it also gets multiplied by the gear ratios in the drivetrain. If I was taller and more handsome like Jeremiah, I could get way more into this topic, but for now, we'll just say that if you ever go to a dyno, the person running the dyno needs to know your gear ratios, final drive, and even wheel size to get an accurate torque reading. But EVs do not have all those gears. They have what is called direct drive. So the motors aren't going through the same torque multiplication that an internal combustion engine car is. Staying with me? Good. So EV makers have been kind of stuck when it comes to advertising torque. Do they list the motor torque, which is an unremarkable number and doesn't really represent the feel of what most EVs can do with that instant torque delivery? Or do they show the numbers in a different way? The Hummer EV's 11,500 foot-pounds of torque is most likely wheel torque. The amount of turning force that one of those 35-inch tires has, not the torque of the output shaft. The Tesla Roadster may have also advertised its torque this way with a whopping 7,000 foot-pounds, not really disclosing that at the motor, that's probably closer to like 800. That's still very impressive. So if we take this reasoning and apply it to the Tachyon, you can see how 4,000 foot-pounds wouldn't be that bold of a claim if it's a measurement of wheel torque. Wheel torque is real torque, how about that? But numbers on a spec sheet only mean so much if you're selling your car as a track weapon. And there's more to building a good track car than just giving it a bunch of power and Alcantara. There's a lot of work that goes into aerodynamics, suspension geometry, weight distribution, mechanical grip, the list goes on and on. And it used to be that you couldn't really get that dialed without a wind tunnel, a test track, and lots of money. But this is 2022 we're living in, and while we still haven't figured out how to solve world hunger or keep PS5s in stock, testing and building a track car has gotten a lot easier to do without a big team. You just need some computer skills. The Tachyon went through development using computational fluid dynamics, or CFD testing. While a true wind tunnel might be more refined, CFD testing is basically a digital wind tunnel for a computer model. And since the car was designed using CAD, it was easy to adjust the design to make the aero work before even manufacturing a single piece. How convenient. The bodywork is mostly carbon fiber, which at one time was a rarefied material, but today carbon fiber is so common that you can learn how to make carbon fiber pieces from YouTube videos. Now, it takes a lot more skill than a few Google searches and a DIY kit to make a full tub, but compared to what it used to be, I can't say I find it hard to believe. All this kind of goes to show how much the industry has advanced even in the last 20 years, and a company like Raesr could be in just the right spot to take advantage. Raesr is a small company with an ambitious goal, but that doesn't mean they can't be successful. Just look at a company like Noble, a small supercar maker in the UK that set out to build dream drivers' cars that ended up building the M600, which became a favorite of the Top Gear guys and a revered supercar in its own right. This is one of my dream cars. So there's a precedent for a small team with a big idea making it work. But what about the whole 1600 horsepower versus 1200 horsepower thing? I'm gonna give Raesr the benefit of the doubt on this one. I'd bet that 1600 horsepower was the original goal, and then they pivoted to something more manageable during the prototype process. Honestly, that's just so much horsepower, how would you even tell the difference? So after going through everything that Raesr claims the Tachyon speed can do, I'm pretty convinced that they could deliver on what they say. But I fear that by the time they do, EV supercars will be another order of magnitude faster, and that's the biggest problem. EV tech is moving so fast, maybe too fast for a small shop to keep up. The Lotus Avia, the Rimac Navara, and the Tesla Roadster all make the Tachyon speed look a little less impressive on paper. And if Raesr still hasn't gone into production by the time those cars launch, I'm not seeing as many people spend their hard-earned money on maybe a less impressive car built by a less established company for probably more money. There's still some things that I didn't get to touch on that I'm a little wary of. Raesr says they'll have all-wheel drive torque vectoring, which sounds like a pretty advanced thing to design. I don't know, it might be outside the scope of a small shop. But I'd love to give our neighbors a chance to put me in my place. Raesr, Eric, Chris, if you're watching this, we'd love the opportunity to see what your car can do.
Hey docs, stop wearing layers upon layers of Yoda's Tacos t-shirts this winter. Just buy the all-new Yoda's Tacos hoodie and sweatpants. They're exactly like the shirt, except thicker and with the hood and a fun drawstring and pants. Get yours today at donutmedia.com. Don't be a chilly Billy, be a warm Norm.
Also, I just want to let you guys know we did reach out to Raesr multiple times to get more help on this video. They did answer a lot of our questions. We did want to visit their shop, but I think it was like a scheduling thing. What do you guys think? Can a small company really build a supercar? Let me know in the comments. What do you think of EVs in general? The more I drive, the more I like them. Follow me at Nolan J. Sykes on all social media. Sorry about my voice. I feel like it got better. Be kind. I'll see you next time.